Hello, everybody. How are you doing today? My name is Tony Rizzano, and you are listening to another episode of the World University, the best podcast, ladies and gentlemen, in 1, 2, 3 galaxies. So, ladies and gentlemen, you and I, we just call this show Online Marketing Moves. And we are coming to you live today. Today is Monday, April 7th, 2025. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very happy to be talking to you today. Ladies and gents, how have you been? I know it's been a little bit, ladies and gentlemen. You know, we took a little vacation, a little time with my daughter, drove to South Carolina. Okay, me and my wife and the baby. Took my father-in-law over there. My father-in-law decided he wants to live the remainder of his golden years in the great state of South Carolina. So we went over there and we did that. It was a very nice time. My daughter, she enjoys eating steak. So we got to eat a steak. We went to a couple of different restaurants. Pretty good, pretty delicious. We stopped in Columbia, South Carolina. One thing that annoyed my wife was that we was going to go to the Children's Museum, but it was closed. So that annoyed my wife. But other than that, ladies and gentlemen, we had a nice time. Came back, spent more time with my wife and baby. I was going to record, and I said, you know what? I'm going to give the people a break. I'm going to take a break, and everything's going to be okay. But ladies and gentlemen, we are back. We are rocking and rolling. We are ready to go. I am very happy to talk to you today. Ladies and gentlemen, today was very important as usual. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, if you know anybody that needs copywriting services, please contact the show. Contact me at TonyRizzano.com. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get into this immediately. I was thinking about this today, ladies and gents. You know, perception rules the nation sometimes, you know? You ever think about this? You know, when I was a kid, I watched basketball. Michael Jordan is considered one of the greatest basketball players of all time. Ladies and gentlemen, it does not matter if you watch basketball in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, 2010s, and 2020s. You can have your favorite basketball player. He can be the greatest of all time. That's okay. But to me, ladies and gentlemen, of course, Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson, for me, neck and neck. I like Magic. You know, I watched Magic when I was a kid. He used to run down the court. Magic Johnson, he had vision. Man, he would throw a basketball to somebody and they would dunk it. When the Lakers got to rolling, it was beautiful to watch. But I was more developed with my basketball watching ability when Michael Jordan was taking flight. I remember 1988, 1989, the 90s, Michael Jordan. But anyway, Michael Jordan, of course, he's considered one of the greatest basketball players of all time. And ladies and gentlemen, he teamed up with a guy named Scott Pippen. Considered he's in the top 100, top 150, whatever, basketball players of all time. There's always this thing. Would Scottie Pippen be as great as he was without Michael Jordan? I believe he would be, because Scottie Pippen was a defensive. He was great at defense. He developed his offensive game. And, you know. But what made me really think about this was today I heard a song come on the radio. And there was a song by G-Unit. If you don't know G-Unit was 50 Cent, Lloyd Banks, Tony Yayo, and Young Buck. And you know, I got to thinking about Young Buck and Tony, I got to thinking about Lloyd Banks and Young Buck. And I thought, would their music careers be as great without 50 Cent? Because they were perceived to be, you know, good rap when they were rap. But would have how could I say? Would Young Buck would have flourished? Would he have flourished more without 50 Cent? I think, because a lot of times it's the perception. It's, oh, this guy's great, but he's great with, you know. It's like when I was in the Navy, Nelly ascended to heights. He sold a lot of albums, and he took off. Right? It was a perfect storm. Nelly, St. Louis Rams. I think they just won the Super Bowl. Nelly was like, we going down, down, baby, no, and all that. But I remember, later on, I found, Nelly said, they said, if I sign a deal, if I sell this many records, I could bring St. Lunatics. St. Lunatics was like Murphy Lee and Ali and all that. And they were a cool group. But it's like, would those guys have sold as many albums without Nelly being around? And I believe, well, Murphy Lee, he went gold. So Murphy Lee, because he had, charisma, probably, but the rest of them, I don't think. Sometimes it's not what you know, sometimes it's who you know, it's where you stand, like stand right here next to. If you are with the guy, you you ever been out? You ever been out with somebody, and they might be, they might be more personal. You might be that day. You might be like, I don't really want to bother with people, or they just might be somebody that's always talking, always meeting people. You happen to be with them, and so the people, if they run into a group of people, well, let me before we go, let me explain to you, okay? Now, before Hinge, Bumble, Tinder, and all these dating apps. Now there were dating apps back then. Apps. You could go to the personal section of like newspaper and meet people, but most people, ladies and gentlemen, when I was in my early 20s, all throughout my 20s, most people met, in a way where you ran into somebody, you said, "Hey, how are you doing? Hey, how are you doing?" They would say, "I am fine. How are you doing?" And so you met that way, and you would get a pen, paper, like, here you go, you got a phone number. But ladies and gentlemen, I say all that to say, you would get with somebody, you would be with somebody, hanging out with them, and they're like, maybe they talk a lot, or maybe they, their perception would be, oh, you are a fun-loving person. Well, you're really not. But you meet a group, and then all of a sudden now you have to be all chit chatty because they're gonna be chit chatty. It's the perception. That was a very bad example. We'll do better with the rest of it. We'll do better with the rest of it. With the rest of the example. That was. And we don't edit. We do not edit this show, so we will not be editing that part out. That was bad. See, ladies and gentlemen, do not have to be perfect all the time. Sometimes we all say that analogy was scholarly. I will admit that. I apologize. Let's move forward. Okay? We're not going to rush. Okay? But anyway, so yeah. Just like I remember you, because we were talking about negative perception. Positive, negative. Now, I remember I would give you a better example. I told you we are going to do better. One time I remember when I was a young man, when I wore younger man's clothes. I always like to say that. Shout out to Billy Joe. But I had a friend. I remember I was a senior in high school, and I started working, and I was dressing better, and I was forming myself into becoming a man. But anyway, and I had a job. I was getting haircuts often, so things were changing. I took a bigger interest in women, and I remember this girl. We was having a conversation, and I'm like, man, what's going on with you? She's like, I'm having a party. I was like, oh, really? I said, she's like, listen. Tony Rizano, I would invite you. Tony Rizano, I like you. Tony Rizano, you only got one problem. I said, what is that? He said, the friend you hang around is garbage. I said, oh, no, not my boy. I said, he is my boy. She said, I know. That's a problem. He is obnoxious. I can't invite you to the party because then he would come. Ah, man. And I remember I told my friend, I said, because of you, sir, I am missing out. I need to drop you like a bad habit. He said, come on. You wouldn't do that. No, I wouldn't do that. Now looking back on it, the perception of him, ladies and gentlemen, was negative. When you have a negative perception, it can work in the opposite direction of having a positive. Hang out with 50 Cent and you can become a platinum rapper like Lloyd Banks. Hang out with 50 Cent, you can become a platinum gold record like Young Buck. You hang out with my friend in high school, you cannot get invited to the party. Ladies and gentlemen, perception. I was watching one of my favorite movies just the other day because I watched it because it is leaving Netflix. Julia Roberts, Hugh Grant, and Notting Hill, ladies and gentlemen. He said, can you have perspective? She said, hey, we are in two different worlds. I've been dealing with this garbage for 10 years, blah, blah, blah. We have different perspectives, how we look. So, ladies and gentlemen, when you want to, this is why people want to get with, famous people and have famous people endorse their products because they look more and more legit. Hey, listen, you and I both know that Hollywood, fame, celebrity, it's all BS. But, ladies and gentlemen, sometimes sometimes you need to use it. Sometimes you want to obtain it. So that way you can look better. You can charge more. You can do more things. The perception of you standing on top of the mountain is a great thing. That is why you want to you want to become the expert, because the perception of you being an expert will be, I should listen to this guy and know what they're doing. That is where you want to be. Okay? Ladies and gentlemen, for the most part, this was a good show. We only had one part that was bad. Not hold that against. Okay? Come back tomorrow with all new episodes of Online Marketing Move. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Tony Rizano. Thank you for listening. God bless each and every one of you. And I hope the audio was good on this. And you know who I'm talking to. I had a complaint, not a complaint. There are no complaints. People only help you out. So if you listen to this show, ladies and gentlemen, and you notice there's a tick, there's a noise, there's something wrong with the video, something wrong with audio, please, if you have my phone number, you can text. If you don't have my phone number, you can email me, Tony@TonyRizano.com, and you can let me know, hey, the audio on this one was bad, the audio on that one was bad, the video was bad, or whatever. Because in the future, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to take this podcast to bigger and better, to do bigger and better things. So we need your help for the time being, because I am a producer, I am a broadcaster. So sometimes things slide through the goal. Okay? But you can help me out. I greatly appreciate that. And in the meantime and in between time, ladies and gentlemen, that's it. That's all. It's a wrap. I appreciate you. I love you. Talk to you tomorrow. All new episode of Online Marketing Moves. Tony Rizano. Thank you. God bless you once again. As always, everybody. Peace.